really enable Office 365 to do more than the initial product offering and what the stack is. So today I'm going to spend about 4 or 5 slides just giving you just a quick overview of Office 365 if you're fairly new to it, and maybe giving you an insight on a couple of things that we're doing as a team going forward. So if we can go to the next slide, that'd be great. There we go. Okay, fantastic. So just as a glance, if you're new, there's probably even an addition to this slide as well. On the top left, if we go in a circle, the Office 365 Pro Plus is our online version of Office 2013. It's called Office 365 Pro Plus because it gives you the online capabilities of having the latest version of Office 2013. For the PC, you can also run Office 2011 for the Mac. That will probably be updated in the next 6 to 9 months. What Office 365 Pro Plus also provides is their click-to-run technology. So when you first start using it, it immediately will start downloading and be able to use that application that you're into at that point in time. And then over a matter of a few minutes, the entire suite will be downloaded. You can also use Office 365 Pro Plus for the iPhone, Android, and Office Mobile on the Windows Phone. And we just recently announced the Office for iPad, which is part of the Office 365 Pro Plus offering for students or for faculty. But you would need to have the online version of Office 365 to obtain that. Another great enhancement to this is, compared to the traditional way of buying Office 2013, is you get a per-user license, and you can run up to 5 machines. Now that's 5 PCs or Macs or 5 tablets. So that's pretty important. And so we're continuing to enhance this offer. We're making more announcements about support for Chrome browsers and some of the functionality you have around that. And then going through the circle, SharePoint Online is part of the suite as well. And I'll go through the different suite SKUs so you get an idea of what's free and what comes at a small price. SharePoint Online gives, first and foremost, OneDrive, which is up to 25 gigabytes of, think of it as your digital locker. That's your personal site that you can store your documents and have and share with your organization. You also have the class sites or department sites of 500 megs. So that can really scale up to up to terabytes in an organization, depending on how many class sites that you have. We also have the real-time authoring with Office Online, which is fantastic. You can share documents securely inside and outside the organization, and I'll talk probably mention a little bit about that in some of the other slides with the encryption, with the rights management, e-discovery, and data loss protection. And then we're going to, which we don't have here, but we have on some of our other slides, is Yammer, and that's to collaborate with faculty and students instantly, more of a social network type UI, and that will also be free, but we'll probably have that available sometime in May, maybe early June, depending on when the product group goes through a couple of legal issues to iron out in terms of age and whatnot. But that will be coming up very soon. Also, then on the top right is Link Online. Link Online provides a whole host of functionality. You get instant messaging and presence. So the presence tells you when you log onto your machine, you're green for available or red, you're in a meeting, or even tell you if you're on a phone call using Link. Link Online provides peer-to-peer, point-to-point, PC to PC, or PC to Mac, voice over IP phone calls. We also have high-definition web conferencing, which is, I guess you could say, competitor to GoToMeeting, but it does provide the desktop sharing, annotation, whiteboarding, polling, and ability to use high-definition video conferencing and video conferencing rooms. We also call them link room systems. So we have partnerships with Polycom and Crestron and several others. Of course, instant messaging and presence as your IM client, and we federate to Skype, which is Skype is free, and that's for voice and for IM and presence, and eventually video will be here this year. Exchange Online, of course, also gives you the full capability of email, calendaring, contacts. It gives you the free busy coexistence. It has integrated personal archiving. There's retention policies. You have e-discovery, legal hold, data loss prevention, and there's a 50 gigabyte mailbox. And if you want to pay a little extra, you can get voicemail and unified messaging in that as well. So if we go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about some of the SKUs. Thank you, Chris. This kind of gives you an overview of the actual suite itself. So we have alumni offers, so when folks graduate, again, this is free as well. They would get Exchange Online for alumni. Then you also have the Suite A2, which gives you what I mentioned, SharePoint Online Plan 1, Link Online Plan 1 and 2, Exchange Online Plan 1, and of course Yammer. That's what is Suite A2. A3 is something that comes at a cost. It's to be a per user per month. And the ERP pricing is $2.50 per student per month if you wanted to have the A3 suite. Typically we see faculty using A3 for majority of their users, and students many of the times are using the free A2 suite. And that's $4.50 for faculty, but there are discounts if you have an CoreCal or eCal agreement with Microsoft, or there are some upgrade opportunities to make that a lower per user per month charge. So if we go to the next slide, that should be the A2 versus A3 bullet chart. I think this is a little easier to read. We do have service descriptions. If you want to know what's in Link, what's in Exchange, Yammer, etc., then there is a hyperlink for the service descriptions on TechNet that you can kind of see, 400 level of everything that's included. And they do that because things change on a monthly basis. It's hard for us to even keep up with all the new additions and changes that they're adding. But starting off, we look at A2. Again, A2 is free, and it gives you Exchange Online, which is email, calendar, contacts, any malware, role-based permissions, 50 gigabyte mailbox, and even e-discovery. That also comes in A3, of course. There is a difference between Exchange Plan 1, which is an A2, and Exchange Online Plan 2. I'm sorry, Exchange Online Plan 1 is an A2, and Exchange Online Plan 2 is an A3. That is noted towards the bottom when you mention voicemail and data loss protection prevention in that SKU. There's also instant messaging and presence and video conferencing. That's the Link Online Plan 1 and 2, which is free in A2. Office web apps, it's now called Office Online, which you can code, view, and co-edit together. That's using browser-based viewing. That's free in both suite. Don't mix it up with Office 365 Pro Plus. That's the full version where you can edit and have the full version that you can download or do online. The collaboration, which is in SharePoint Online, gives you the OneDrive. This one says SkyDrive. It's OneDrive. Now we renamed it to 25 gigs. And classroom sites, and you can even do things like Project Online, which is free as well. The Office 365 Pro Plus is the ability to use those bits which are automatically updated from Microsoft in our data centers, where you can download to 5 machines. It comes with Office for iPad, and again, you can use on the PC or the Mac. That also is, we have for the students get to use Office 365 Pro Plus for no charge, no additional charge, if the faculty are licensed for Office 365 Pro Plus or Office 2013, depending on the licensing. We're going through a change as we start licensing through the traditional EES model, which is more of the on-prem model, to more of a cloud per user per month model. And so over time you'll see changes in offerings through that. So that comes in the A3 SKU, and then the rights management also comes in the A3. And then when you have Exchange Online Plan 2, that provides voicemail, the data loss prevention and protection, in-place hold, e-discovery, those sorts of things are in the A3 as well. And then the unlimited in-place archiving, unlimited archiving is in A3, where you get some basic archiving in A2. So at a small price per user per month, that's noted at the bottom, and again, that's ERP pricing for education, K through 12 and higher ed. If we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about, there we go, that Student Advantage comes with that. We'll talk a little bit about some of the standalone SKUs, and Of course, with Exchange, we mentioned Exchange Online Plan 1 is no charge for faculty, students, and then even alumni. And if you wanted Plan 2 and look at possibly replacing your voicemail system, Exchange Online Plan 2 can do that. You get unlimited storage, you have voicemail, advanced archiving, encryption. Encryption is important because you can emails and attachments, like if the Office documents or PDFs, can be encrypted using rights management, which is an online service. So you can send it outside your organization or inside your organization that's encrypted. That's important. E-discovery is also important because it gives you a process for identifying and delivering electronic information that can be used possibly as evidence that your compliance officer may need. So that's part of the SharePoint e-discovery center. That's important. And then the data loss protection, or DLP as a lot of people refer to it, is real important of the messaging system because it really makes extensive use of the email platform. It enforces the compliance requirements for data and how to manage it and the use, and without hindering the productivity of the workers. So you can manage sensitive data better than before, and you can set up these policies in the Exchange Admin Center, EAC, and then activate to filter the email. So you can choose to activate it or not, and not to use it at all, but you can test these policies without affecting the mail flow, and it gives you the full power of existing transport rules, etc. So that's for several school districts. They find out that data loss protection and e-discovery is an important part of their compliance for the district, and that's why faculty have looked at A3 or at a minimum Exchange Online Plan 2. All right, so Link Online Plan 3 towards the bottom provides the ability for PC to phone communication like it does in Plan 2, but what's different on there is there's a third-party dial-in conferencing bridge that is being included in Link. We'll probably see a lot of updates on Link Online Plan 3 throughout the next 24 months with additional dial-in conference options, PBX integration, and eventually enterprise voice in the cloud. But again, I think that's a good 24-month cycle, and you'll see updates probably every summer with some of the functionality in Link. And then we did talk about Office 365 Pro Plus, giving you the subscription for the PC, Mac, mobile devices, and iPads. And again, the big difference on that, it's 5 devices per user for PC, Mac, or tablets and phones. So next slide tells us a little bit about a couple of services that we may, oops, I guess I didn't make it in this one. But all right, I'll just mention real quick, Yammer Enterprise is available this spring, so we're expecting the next 30 to 60 days for education. And Power BI gives you cloud-based business intelligence that works with Excel and Office 365 to analyze and visualize data. You don't have to license Power BI for all of your users, just a subset of users. It's about $16 per user per month, so it's really your high data intensive big data users there. And then there's also Visio Pro for Office 365 at a small amount per month. Project Online is free, but if that's with integration with Project Server, but if you had a subscription version of Project Professional with online capabilities, then it's a small $2 per month charge for faculty and $1 for students. So with that, I will hand it back over to Katie, Chris, and Peesh, and I really appreciate everyone's assistance. If you have any questions, let us know. We have weekly trainings that our inside sales team conducts, and we're happy to pass any of that information along to those who are interested as well.
Bill, thank you so much. Chris, if we can get presenter control, that would be awesome. This iSeminar is not intended to cover moving from premise Exchange to O365. There's a series of iSeminars that drill into the best practices around that process. But what we're going to focus on next is really the single sign-on elements. And what I want to start with is the Campus EAI Consortium is the sponsoring organization of QuickLaunch. The consortium has more than 1,800 members in more than 12 countries. QuickLaunch is being used by about 400 institutions in about 10 countries, both higher ed and K-12 shops. The types of institutions that are utilizing QuickLaunch, this is you should be able to see a partial list of institutions, but it ranges from Florida State to Louisiana State, Cal State, University of Maine System, Miami-Dade, these types of shops, as well as smaller institutions and institutions using all types of ERP systems and learning management systems ranging from PeopleSoft to Ellucian, Banner, Colleague, Power Campus, and Canvas, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the rough general context on QuickLaunch. The most important thing is the platform. If you're bona fide higher ed or K-12 in terms of as an institution or school district, is free. The license for the entire institution and all the users is under a grant as long as you fall within the education segment. The specific sort of user experience as it relates to SharePoint is that you hit a login screen, you basically get into the SharePoint environment, and if you launch out from SharePoint 2013, in which it's called an app part, you basically, here's your QuickLaunch application, you basically would get into an application such as Banner self-service. You would also get into an application, again, such as whatever you might have configured from a role-based single sign-on standpoint. So this is the notion of QuickLaunch residing within the context of SharePoint 2013. We also support older versions of SharePoint, in which it's called a web part and not an app part, in terms of the technology and terminology has changed with 2013. Now, from a technical standpoint, what is happening behind the scenes is you're logging into SharePoint on-premise or SharePoint in your Office 365 environment, and the QuickLaunch app part is injected within your SharePoint context. The QuickLaunch application is going to check with your directory server or multiple directory server or directory server and database environment or CAS or Shiv environment to see if the user is authenticated or authenticatable and what role that user plays. Maybe they're a student and a teacher or student and faculty. And based on that context, it's going to serve up the user experience that I just showed you in terms of whatever applications and services you have you're supposed to have access to. Let's say, for example, Outlook Web Access, Blackboard, and Banner. And it's also deep single sign-on. So it's not just Banner self-service. It could be, grades, registration, that type of thing. So that's this is not like a logical diagram exactly, but it hopefully gives you a little bit of an insight into what's behind the scenes in terms of how QuickLaunch works. We have more than 500 pre-built adapters for QuickLaunch. So there usually isn't a system that we've come across in higher ed and K-12 now where we don't have a pre-built adapter to, including many adapters for systems like Blackboard 9, because there are many different ways in which Blackboard 9 could be set up. It could be set up to authenticate with CAS. It could be set up to authenticate via Shiv. It could have the same username and password as Active Directory. You could have a completely different username and password as Active Directory. Maybe you don't have building blocks. Maybe you do have building blocks. That type of thing. So each of those have different adapter scenarios. Now, the way for those that are super technical, the way that we inject QuickLaunch into SharePoint technologically is that we're able to CASify the ADFS context or ADFS the CAS context. QuickLaunch itself comes with a pre-built CAS service inside it in case you were trying to kill two birds with one stone or trying to implement CAS anyway, like if you're an Ellucian Banner shop. But we also have built it to assume that you may not have ADFS or ADFS is not part of your architecture and strategy. So we've taken different approaches to the same mission of injecting that QuickLaunch app into SharePoint. Because the question is, okay, why are you talking about this? Because when you log into SharePoint, you don't want to get a login screen for QuickLaunch, right? Somehow that has to be magically handled. And without getting into too much of essentially this level of session information in terms of how the session is handled and initiated, and responses are pushed back and forth. At a very high level, we have basically created a trust relationship or a single sign-on relationship between SharePoint and QuickLaunch, and we have done things like, for example, leveraged non-forked CAS and extended it with the WS Federation overlay. Despite the good things coming from O365, like SAML2 support recently, these relationships between things like CAS and SharePoint 2013 are required, and we had to step up the adapter and do the work, hence the need for the adapter, again, between SharePoint 2013 and between the QuickLaunch and CAS service infrastructure. So this is just two ways. They're not really big pros and cons between these two approaches, which is CASifying ADFS and ADFS-ifying CAS. But we've also encountered situations where people are not rolling ADFS and they require a solution. So we've extended our infrastructure to support single sign-on within O365, assuming a non-ADFS environment, with basically a federation service, which is called QuickLaunch Federation or QuickLaunch Access Manager, that performs the relationship between SharePoint 2013 and QuickLaunch. So these are more details. We can talk about these details offline in terms of which approach might be better for you. But the main item is that QuickLaunch is now available in SharePoint 2013 and available, therefore, to Ellucian portal and any other sort of packaged platforms that leverage SharePoint. Now, the other approach that many of you are interested in is QuickLaunch operating within the context of an existing student portal. Now, an existing student portal may mean Looking Glass, which is the new term for My Campus. It could be uPortal. It could be Luminous Portal, which is based on LifeRay. It could be any other portal. It could be LifeRay. It could be EXO, that type of thing. So QuickLaunch, in a very similar sort of approach or context, almost identical to the way we're operating with SharePoint, is already available within those platforms with the same rough environment. But the point we wanted to make here is not that. It's that single sign-on to O365 is something significant, because half of our institutions that are using QuickLaunch, for example, were using Live@EDU. And as they shifted to O365, they didn't want their single sign-on to break and to get a login screen. So we had to engineer very, very quickly the adapter from an existing QuickLaunch deployment within a student portal to support the O365 single sign-on. So I'm going to show you an example of that with St. Lawrence College. I hope the session is still live. But in St. Lawrence College, they're running the My Campus platform. When you click single sign-on into O365, you basically have the user going right into the O365 context. So that uses the adapter for O365 single sign-on as an example, right? So in this user experience, again, you have the QuickLaunch environment performing single sign-on into O365. Just to give you a couple of other examples, this is the Looking Glass portal platform. This is also specifically for existing users of My Campus. You have the ability basically to launch out O365, directly single sign-on into your course site within Canvas or whatever it might be, like inorganic chemistry. You also have the ability, for example, to get, like I said earlier, into registration, not just into banner self-service, right? So again, that's the idea in terms of user experience of what the QuickLaunch environment looks like. The cool thing is, behind the scenes, it's a RESTful web service, so we can really make it look like however you want it to look like. In this case, this is the default user experience in Looking Glass, but it can also be the default user experience in O365 and SharePoint 2013. or however you want it to look like, is what it could look like, because at the end of the day, on the front end, you're talking about JavaScript, HTML, that type of thing. So the other user experience I wanted to share with you is, and just to give you an example, a lot of people launch their single sign-on, like LSU is using QuickLaunch, right from their public website where it says log into my LSU. That hits a login screen for QuickLaunch. And when you log into some of these schools, you also could see QuickLaunch standing by itself. So this is an example of QuickLaunch in a test system standing by itself without a front end or portal. In other words, you could have it such that your single sign-on is running inside SharePoint 2013 and has an sso.institution.edu URL associated to it. But the big thing that institutions are doing is they're extending the single sign-on further to the desktop. So what's happening in terms of, from a single sign-on user experience standpoint, is something more like, let me just sort of give you the rough visual for it, is something like this, where user logs in to their machine and is auto-logged in to their QuickLaunch service. So that's another user experience, just another example of a user experience that is possible, which is called desktop SSO. The other user experience that I wanted to highlight is mobile. So there are quite a number of institutions who have extended their single sign-on services into the mobile realm. So anything that's available in SharePoint 2013 by way of single sign-on is also extended so that a native mobile app cross-platform, and especially highlighting the Microsoft platform, is available. So you download the app within your Microsoft mobile platform. You're able then to have single sign-on to the same applications and services that were available via the desktop SSO or the portal or standalone context. So these are, different again implementation scenarios or examples. We talked a little bit about this already in terms of the types of systems. This is just a high level. Usually everybody wants ERP, student information system, LMS, library, email covered for sure. And then there's, I've seen up to 80 single sign-ons within, for example, University of North Carolina, Wilmington, where they've added even their own custom single sign-ons for, their PHP applications. So QuickLaunch has its own administrative interface, which allows you to add and remove single sign-ons without having to, basically there's a GUI for administrating it, so you don't have to, have a support ticket created to add or remove a single sign-on. Really the idea is, we want you to be able to do this on your own. Usually you're not going to change your student information system, but your LMS you might, or some smaller applications you might want to bring into the mix or into the fold. So that's sort of a quick background in terms of how QuickLaunch works and operates. This is an example of optional services, right? You don't have to do any of this stuff, but if you want to delegate all of the accountability for QuickLaunch to be done by services and not do the work on your own, basically this is just a rough schedule of 5 single sign-ons being implemented, the application being upgraded from version X to Y to Z on your behalf, hosting, support, roughly gives you costing beyond just the license in case you need additional help within your implementation or from an ongoing support standpoint. So, generally speaking, the main issue that is important to identify within this context. By the way, these are the technical slides behind what's going on at FLC, which is the example I showed you earlier. But the main thing that we need to understand are the details of your context. So, yeah, of course. Okay, we're an Active Directory shop. We have O365. We have a student portal, or we want to inject this within O365. We maybe don't need desktop SSO right now. The mobile thing will hold off. We have Banner. We need to know that detail, and then furthermore, we need to get beyond that. So, for example, within Banner, are you authenticating banner via CAS already, or do you want to leverage the CAS server and QuickLaunch to move to that because you're going to need it for XE anyway? Or are you going to implement CAS separately, but right now you're using LDAP-based authentication, or you're authenticating via PINs and you haven't moved to CAS or LDAP-based authentication? So we need to know that detail. And then, do you want INB single sign-on? Because if you don't have it and you need it, you're going to need BEIS, for example, SSO Manager configured. So we can't just say banner, right? We need to get into those details of your application's identity context in terms of, setting it up. Now, this session is also not focused on provisioning and deprovisioning users. That we do separate sessions on Microsoft Forefront and Azure for provisioning and deprovisioning automation and for password reset, but it's kind of related, right? Meaning they're very much related to one another and can be used in tandem. So what I wanted to say is if you've just got to do password management, QuickLaunch has a small password management function associated with it. But if you're looking to do real automation in terms of provisioning and deprovisioning automation, then you've got to move to what like Marshall University is doing. So I'm going to show you Marshall University, their banner shop. They're utilizing QuickLaunch. So I'm just going to go to their MyMU, and what you'll see is they have their QuickLaunch at play, just like SLC, so they're identical. So I'm not going to go too much into their portal context. So this is what their user experience looks like. If you want to hit, for example, something like a password reset, it's going to go what looks like to QuickLaunch, but it's really going to go to the Microsoft platform to basically do the account password reset or the changed password, for example. So in this case, an adjunct to QuickLaunch is a Microsoft Forefront, and again, that's a separate topic. We're not going to get into the details of that, but that's where you might make the decision to do, provisioning and deprovisioning and password reset, password management, and not use the password reset tool within QuickLaunch. So I know I'm putting QuickLaunch down, but if you need to do a password management and you don't care yet about automation of your identity management, provisioning, deprovisioning, then you could do the QuickLaunch bit. But as we see schools really think through their overall identity environment, if they haven't already, they then could turn off the QuickLaunch password reset function and move to the I would say broader identity solution for automation of identity provisioning and deprovisioning. So within the general context of the IT environment, this is kind of relevant. So again, overall, this is sort of the technical stack that could be leveraged to support a QuickLaunch that almost relates to it, because some people are not sure where the lines are drawn. Like should QuickLaunch be doing provisioning and deprovisioning? Yes, if we wanted to spend a lot of money in building that out, but Microsoft is doing that very, very effectively and been putting a lot of money into that platform. It seems right now to be the #1 or #2 most widely deployed identity platform, probably second to the Sun platform due to its legacy install base, at least what we're seeing from a consortium standpoint. The other area that I wanted to highlight for, again, those that are technical is the infrastructure or the architecture. So QuickLaunch is basically set up architecturally to run as large as a Virginia Community College system is probably the largest user of QuickLaunch other than the company of Genzibar across 600 schools. VCCS is about a 250,000 active student deployment, and it means that QuickLaunch can run on a multi-node architecture across a load balancer and can be significantly capable of handling the type of throughput of Florida State or VCCS or LSU require, right? And then because of the involvement of schools like this, and frankly FSU and LSU are the key development partners for QuickLaunch, it has extended itself to handling security issues like layer 7 OWASP, single sign-out that nobody tends to ask about. But underlying the infrastructure is really lightweight Java, so really RESTful services, Spring Hibernate, and then we basically have this stuff running on it can run on various infrastructures, but we've templatized it to run on essentially VMDK infrastructure, to run on any hypervisor, that type of thing. So if you wind up running this in the cloud environment, so there's a cloud environment option. Most institutions are running this out of the cloud. It could run in Azure. It could run in Campus Cloud. So 90% of the schools are running QuickLaunch, including all the schools I've mentioned on the call so far. Every single one except for main system is running this out of the cloud. And within the cloud environment, we have the ability also to DR from our facilities within North America that include facilities in Phoenix, Denver, Virginia, Cleveland, that type of thing. Or again, wherever you put it into Rackspace or Azure or whatever the cloud context is. So that is an important sort of trend. And why it's 90% is the campuses in Canada, some of them don't feel like they can host outside of Canada, and also the Australian schools based on latency have been hosting in Australia, like Queensland University of Technology, University of Sydney, and others in terms of due to latency back over to North America. So otherwise it would be more like 98%, for example. In fact, the only two schools I know of that I can think of that are hosting on-prem now are like NYIT and main system. I'm sure there are a couple of others. But that's a big trend change from a couple of years ago where maybe 50, 60% of the deployments were being done on-premise. So again, from an architecture infrastructure standpoint, the other really cool thing is as a user of this platform or service, you have direct access to the underlying code base and the Subversion repository that holds it. That means you have the ability, like LSU, to take a module and rebuild it, add an adapter, whatever you might want to do, or like FSU, they're very involved, but they're more involved in providing the direction, saying, hey, this is the enhancement document that we'd like to see on the next release, whereas LSU is actually taking a module and saying, well, we could probably write it better, and contributing it back into the, into the product trunk. So it's very cool from it's a collaborated initiative, not just released by the QuickLaunch development team and QA operation, and then utilized. So that's important because a lot of the additions and enhancements, starting from the earliest, for example, the first adapter for WebCT that was provided to QuickLaunch came in 2005 from University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So that's kind of really cool as it relates to how the adapters have been amassed and also how the feature set from the user experience side in terms of the client side or the administrative interface has been developed and enhanced. So hopefully, again, this gives you a little bit of an insight into QuickLaunch and its capability to be deployed into SharePoint as a single sign-on service to the existing applications that you might be running. Hopefully gives you an insight with that within that context you can also utilize QuickLaunch as your CAS service, right? In terms of, because it has a built-in CAS container, and that container is not forked. So I kind of tell people that, hey, if you're thinking about CAS, just think about QuickLaunch as a super cool version of CAS non-forked. Why is it non-forked? Because nobody wants to get into the business of reinventing the wheel with the work that CAS and Apira are already doing and extending CAS. So, that's why it's not forked in terms of the, the CAS underlay. But I think the main thing is that you really need to work with Chris and Katie's team, Bill as appropriate, to make sure that you have the correct phase 1 context. Typically, these projects for implementing QuickLaunch can be done in 30 days, meaning a standard project with 5 single sign-ons and a campus of 10,000 students and whatever it might be, with VPN or connecting back to ADFS for authenticating to Active Directory or LDAP or whatever. But the items that might take a little bit longer are if you do desktop SSO, if you drop into SharePoint 2013 on-premise, or you do mobile. Because just give you an example, if you drop into 2013 SharePoint, well, we're probably going to want to do it in test, for example, and coordinate with you, and then drop it into prod in a coordinated fashion, right? Because that takes plus and minus time. If you roll straight into your into your, for example, standalone QuickLaunch environment, that's going to take you that 30 days, and realistically probably less, because for us this is more, VNDK template, boom, we're ready to go, and then we need to configure the adapters to the appropriate identity context, and then configure the core identity authentication back to your, premise-based, whatever identity environment you might have. So, these are some of the issues in terms of project. It's a pretty straight shot, and then because it's a straight shot, it creates a victory. And it's one of the cool services where we've seen when a portal is weak, like it's not functioning well or nobody's using it, you put QuickLaunch in, and all of a sudden it's a game changer, because now people are coming and utilizing the portal. But when you look at the statistics, they're not. They're coming in to the portal, they're logging in, and boom, they're single signing into whatever service they need to get to. Ultimately, they're saving time. It's a service of efficiency. And the other cool thing is, unlike other systems, it doesn't need to be marketed, right? We don't need to explain, like, oh, this is how you use it or whatever else it is. It's a service that tends to be successful, just as it becomes available in whatever user experience is deployed in. That's what we're seeing across hundreds and hundreds of schools, regardless of the portal. Like, for example, we even have QuickLaunch deployed in Blackboard, within the Blackboard context. So that's I think the power of the environment. And then again, on the adapter side, it's not like we've just built adapters for specific apps. We've also built pattern adapters. So if we come across an application that we've never seen and supports secure post, boom, we can use a secure post adapter. So it would be really corny or marketing for me to say, well, we have 3,000 adapters or 5,000 adapters, because so many applications can support a secure post. We can also support single sign-on into applications that basically have a completely different username and password, but you don't want to use that adapter unless you really, really have to, or it's for a non-critical application, because then we have to do a credential store and replay. Otherwise, there's no data stored, obviously, in QuickLaunch, because we don't want to store usernames and passwords from a security standpoint, right? We want to use things like SAML and like TGT tickets, but marketing people will say SAML, 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 but it's just not the case. Like, you can't just do SAML because CAS might not support it in certain scenarios, or somebody supporting an older, different version of SAML, like 1.1, for example. So really, I want to refer to them as adapters, and some may be the SAML detail or WSFed detail, or in the case of Blackboard, building blocks, proprietary authentication handling happens within the adapter. So again, that's what really needs to be figured out when you work with Chris and Katie. So a couple of the action items I'm going to recommend. One is to make sure that you meet with other institutions that are already doing this in a similar or identical context. So if you're a PeopleSoft school and you're running O365 and running Active Directory, then have Chris and Katie put you in touch with 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 schools who are already doing that, whether standalone or within SharePoint or whatever it might be, so that you can learn from them. They're 3 months or a year and a half ahead of you from a best practices standpoint and from a mentorship standpoint, right? So that's one piece. And then work with the team at QuickLaunch to ensure that you have the correct architecture and scope for phase 1. The best practice there is don't bite off more than you can chew. If you want to do desktop SSO, maybe you do it like SIAST out of phase 1, or like a lot of schools do it in phase 2 once you have your baseline stabilized. Also do 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 single sign-ons. Don't do 220 in your phase 1. Because once you've got your baseline, you can always add single sign-ons, for example, in phase 2. The other recommendation to schools who are already on QuickLaunch, there's about a dozen of you that are already utilizing this environment on the call. I went up to SUNY Oneonta and they said, hey, we're done, we're awesome. And I looked at their Exchange environment and their Angel environment. I said, no, you know what, you're done, but you could take your single sign-ons for those 2 services to the next level. And that's where, we're not going to spend too much time on it, but we're not just here to, basically email a piece of software. The idea here is that a single sign-on can be more secure and faster if you move from, let's say, a secure post adapter to a CAS-based adapter in the case of, what SUNY Oneonta is doing. But then they said, hey, we get it, but we're going to not do that right now because we've got other priorities, and that takes some time. So it's important, but we'll delay it for a bit, and that's a good maybe business decision within their context. So each decision or each institution, even though they may be identical, has to think through their kind of like a roadmap. What are they going to do in phase 1? What are they going to do in phase 2? And then how does that sort of plan break down? So that's why phase 1 should really be get operational, successful, with a rock-solid service from a performance standpoint. Also, for those of you that are utilizing this on a single node, as you start to CASify your ERP and LMS, you want to start thinking about a multi-node architecture, because you don't want the service to be dependent on a single node if you're funneling all your traffic through the service into your back-end applications. And some applications like PeopleSoft or Banner support straight continued backdoor entry even if they're CASified. But still, it just makes sense to have the system in production be in a multi-node architecture. It's also best practice to have a staging environment, or a test system, but not everybody has that always operational. University of the Arts and a couple of other schools have moved into DR. So for those of you who are running this in prod, look at that scenario from a DR standpoint. The other really cool thing that I've seen is, we depend on a directory server, right? Because we have to authenticate against something. So we've also seen institutions move their directory server to the cloud for resiliency. So, for example, if their institution goes out or parts of it go out, the first most critical services are going to be DNS and the directory server to bring back online. And the dependency for us is DNS and the directory server. So if that could be provisioned out, for example, into the cloud, then we can look to both directory servers or to the replicated directory server as a primary. So if the campus is out, the QuickLaunch service can still be operational. Everything behind it, which is a lot of stuff these days, is coming out of the cloud. So we can keep services up, like O365 is up, Single Sign-On is up, maybe Blackboard is up, and all of a sudden, most of the services are up except maybe, let's say, a Lucene colleague or, something like that. So these are some things to think about if you're already in the game in terms of how to take, next sort of steps within your existing deployment. So again, I hope that helps some of the existing users of QuickLaunch that joined today. I'm going to pause there. And Chris, I know there were questions that came up that I tried to address through the session, but I want to maybe kick it open for just a couple of seconds to see if there are any additional questions that are specific for Bill or for myself on O365 or QuickLaunch. If you can open up the lines, we'll wait for a few seconds to see if there are any particular questions.
Sure.
Let me know when you've got lines open. Sounds like we've got some lines open, Chris. Yes, no?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, cool. Does anybody have any particular questions? If you do, if you could state your institution's name, that would be great. We'll wait a few seconds before we go back into broadcast mode. Anybody have any particular items that are pressing? Everyone good? Okay, Chris, take us back into broadcast mode.
Sure.
I wanted to cover a couple of items that are that I have a slide for that I think might be useful. There's a question that was asked about the difference between baseline and adding it to SharePoint. This slide covers that. Again, details could be worked on with Katie and Chris, but there's additional hours that we need to spend between a baseline implementation and adding it to, it's not a lot more, but a little bit more, to getting this into SharePoint, because we have to roll the professional services hours to test it in test and then move into prod, which is X amount of hours times cost per hour, and then spreading that over 5 years. So we have the ability to spread the professional services costs over the term of the relationship, which is really cool. So again, take advantage of that. But this is where you have baseline, and then you have the extension into SharePoint 2013. So I think that should be helpful to the person that posed that question. And like I said earlier, some of what you want to do is make sure that you have your requirements captured properly, with technical people that get the context, and then make sure that you are clear, because there's different setups for even having QuickLaunch in SharePoint or having your QuickLaunch sign into O365 for single sign-on. So we need to make sure that that requirement is set, and also you understand the differences between approach A, B, and C. So I think that's important, and then again, being in touch with other peers is really just a basic part of what this overall initiative is about. I'm going to pause and just thank Bill. Bill, we appreciate the time that you've taken out of your schedule and your team's time in supporting the consortium and QuickLaunch. On behalf of Katie and Chris and the overall consortium, we appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and again, I appreciate your support for Office 365, and we're here to help, and I think it's a great partnership that will continue to grow throughout the year and more to come.
And thank you, Bill. And I also want to appreciate, and we haven't had one institution drop from the session, so to have 50 schools dial into a session, definitely, and this is the second one we've done with this kind of attendance in a row, meaning this is the second one of two. That clearly shows that there's huge interest around this domain, and as we learned from the follow-up on the previous one, everyone's got a different context, so we really need to drill in to that in more detail in a one-on-one, and then Bill's team can be tremendously helpful in terms of clarifying license context or any other options that need to be considered comprehensively, whether you're on A2 already or not. I think that could be very useful. And for those of you who are looking at O365, it would be very, very good to join the other iSeminars that talk about moving Exchange to O365 as well, because some people are trying to offload the rest of their mail if they haven't already offloaded the student email, but really the faculty staff email potentially in addition. So take advantage of the other iSeminars. If you're a member of the Campus EAI Consortium or interested in this stuff, we have quite a large gathering. We have the Midwest Conference coming up in Cleveland, Ohio. So that'd be a good time to meet people face-to-face as well in early June. Thank you to all of you who've taken the hour out of your schedule to learn about O365 from Bill and some of the at least high-level aspects to introduce you to QuickLaunch within today's call. Again, we appreciate your time. This is the Campus EAI Consortium, Microsoft, and QuickLaunch. Wishing you a great rest of the day. Thank you, everyone. We're signing off now. Bye-bye.